Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Planning Commission for Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. And if we could have roll call, please.
Commissioner Wittrin,
Present.
Commissioner Waidila,
Here.
Commissioner Mamoni, Commissioner Prickett,
Here.
Commissioner Wilcox.
Will not be here this evening.
Okay. Chair Stetson,
Present.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, with that, we have a quorum. This time we'll do Pledge of Allegiance, and it's me this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And at this time, we will take public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the Planning Commission this evening on a non-agenda item? Not seeing any hands.
Mr. Chair, two quick notes. I believe Mr. Mamoni is coming into the meeting now, so
Okay,
he should be
great.
marked as present.
Hey, okay. Good evening, sir.
The second is a agenda item as requested by staff.
Okay.
The item C, which is the housing needs and analysis adoption, which is a type 4 hearing, was scheduled to be tonight. Staff is requesting that the item be set aside to the next meeting, which would be on May 12th, 2021 at 7 o'clock. There will be another public hearing at that meeting as well, but we are asking to just move on with the one hearing tonight.
Okay. So we're going to move 71-01 to May 12th.
Correct. And we'll just probably let some folks know later this evening too, who may be joining the call later, anticipating that one.
Okay, great. Okay. With that, we will go over the hearing procedure for tonight. And so the matter that we'll be discussing tonight will be case file LU-0005-2021. And I'd like to explain a little bit about the Planning Commission and the procedure that we'll be following for tonight's public hearing. The Planning Commission is an appointed 7-member volunteer body of Troutdale citizens. Members of the Planning Commission are Troutdale residents who've been appointed by the City Council. They serve 4-year terms. They are strictly volunteers and receive no pay for their services. The Planning Commission serves as a citizen committee for the review of land use applications and various land use related matters within the city. Items which the Planning Commission consider include uses of land, subdivisions, major variances, land use policy plans, and development regulations. For some land use applications, the Planning Commission makes a final decision. For other applications, they are simply making a recommendation to the City Council, who renders the final decision. The item for us tonight will be a type 3 hearing, and the Planning Commission will be the deciding body. And quasi-judicial public hearings are held in accordance with Oregon law and procedures contained in the Troutdale Development Code. The hearing proceeds as follows. City staff presents their report, which includes applicable criteria and standards for the matter under consideration in the land use application. All testimony and evidence should be directed towards these criteria. If you believe that other criteria in the comprehensive plan, development code, or other city land use regulations apply, you must identify these criteria and explain why they apply to the decision. The Planning Commission accepts public testimony relating to the application. The applicant is allowed to speak first, then followed by proponents, then by opponents, and then by any parties neutral to the application. An opportunity will be provided to anyone testifying to clarify any issues raised. All issues raised by a participant during the public hearing must be sufficiently clear and specific to allow the Planning Commission and other parties an opportunity to respond to those issues. Failure to raise an issue during this public hearing may invalidate a future appeal based on that issue. Prior to closing the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission must grant the request either by continuing the public hearing to a future date or by leaving the record open for at least 7 days to admit only that specific additional written evidence or testimony. If the record is left open for the additional written evidence or testimony, any participant may file a written request for an opportunity to respond to new evidence submitted during the period the record was left open. If such a request is filed, the Planning Commission shall reopen the record to allow any person to raise new issues which relate to the new evidence, testimony, or criteria for decision-making. As a final note, public hearings are recorded. Therefore, if you wish to speak, please state your name and address for the record. And testimony will be limited to 5 minutes per person this evening. And again, we will take proponents first, then opponents, then neutral parties. And please, when you speak, make sure you're addressing the criteria for the application, because that's the decision criteria that the Planning Commission works off of. And if you're going to testify and you really agree with what somebody else has said, you can just come up and say, I agree with what this individual said, okay? If you don't want to, say it again, that's fine too. Okay, and before we open the public hearing, does any member of the commission have any conflict of interest, ex parte contact to declare other than, driving by the site in a routine manner? Any conflict of interest or anything by any members of the commission? None? Okay. With that, at this time, we will open the public hearing for case file LU 0005-2021 T-Mobile cell site modification.
Okay, and I believe Ms. Farrell will give the presentation this evening, and I'll be assisting as needed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Irene Farrell. I'm an associate planner with the city of Troutdale, and I'm here to present LU 005-2021 to you tonight. Okay, so this project and this property, we received an application via communications for a modification of an existing cell tower located at 348 Southwest Cherry Park Road. The zoning for this site is a single-family residential R7, and the surrounding property uses for this site are all residential, with the exception of the cemetery on the southern portion of the site. It's worth noting that this cell tower was approved under a conditional use permit back in 2008, and the case file number of that is 08-018. And this proposal is not to tear down the application, the tower itself, but also to modify the top of the tower to add more antennas. And this addition of the antennas will create a different look on that. And based on that, this will go as a modification to the conditional use permit. And in our code, modification that is major is going to be considered as a new application. That's why we're here today. This is the case file 08-018 conditions of approval. Some of this condition of approval will also apply to this modification. It's worth noting, number one, condition of approval is that the monopole shall be engineered, designed, constructed as to allow co-location of additional antennas in the future. And the maximum height of the monopole will be 100 feet. So that kind of gave way to the additional antennas that is being proposed in this application. However, the amount of work it will need to do, it will need to be installed will result in a significant change to the aesthetic of the existing monopole itself. So this is the view of the monopole. When you're driving on Cherry Park Road, just past the post office, it's quite hidden because of the trees that are located on Cherry Park Road. But when you are at Southwest King Byway, it's pretty obvious. I took a drive today too of the site, and the tower itself is pretty high. And in looking at the case file back in 2008, they had made it so then it's somewhat blend the characteristics of what the residential is. So there weren't any antennas installed at the time, and this time there will be. So following up with that is what is being requested. So what is being requested, as mentioned before, is a modification of the existing site, the existing major utility facility. So the applicant, SBA Communications, from what we know based on the documents, is acting on behalf of T-Mobile for their project to update and improve the cell tower located at 338 South Cherry Park. So these improvements will include bigger canisters, as I mentioned, and create a significant change to the aesthetic in of the existing tower. The tower is already permitted, and this will just change that. That modification will modify the tower. So what is not being requested is a new tower, and also a new use for the tower. It also won't result in a zoning change. Major utility facilities are permitted through a conditional use on R7, single family housing zoning district. These are the applicable criteria that we reviewed this application under. Some of the additional ones are public works facilities, but Public Works has informed us that the construction will not affect any of their facilities. And then this is the review for procedure. So conditional use goes through a type 3 quasi-judicial procedure, and that's why we're here today. If there is an appeal on this application, the next step is to go to City Council. The timeline for this, we received back in March 15th, and March 26th is when we deemed the application complete. The public hearing is what we have today. So if this application is approved, the applicant is to contact the building division for any related trade permits that this may apply. When we sent the notice of public hearing and application, there are two agencies that provided comments. So Planning and Building provided comments for this application. Gresham Fire, Multnomah County Transportation, and Public Works declined to comment on this application, as it doesn't, because of the nature of the application, it didn't really affect their operations, and they didn't provide any comments regarding that. We received 3 public comments, one from Judy Huntsman, Consuelo Denson, and Heather Sager. I'm sorry if I apologize if I mispronounce the names. If I did. These are our residents who provided the comments, and that's been included in your packets. So our initial analysis is that the benefits of this improvement will increase the capacity speed for cellular users of the site. as well as also emergency management. Back in 2008, the technology is not as sophisticated as it is today. A lot of the things that we do in life is really now dependent on our cell phone, and the speed of that. We require a lot more in cell phone rather than just using it as a phone to talk and connect with others. We're using it to complete some of our errands, some of our mapping, some of our traffic. So, and also updating the tower, which was built in 2008. Some of the devices and mobile cellular devices are now a lot more, demand a lot more from the speed itself too. So it will be compatible to the current need of today's users instead of the need back in 2008. Some of the drawbacks, as I mentioned, because it will significantly change the aesthetics of this pole, it will make it more obvious that it's a cellular tower than just a pole in the surrounding neighborhood. So it won't blend in with the characteristics at all of with the trees nearby or the surrounding neighborhood. Okay, so per TDC, for our code in section 6.325, the planning commission can put conditions of approval on additional use permit. These are the lists that is provided in our code. Some of these do not apply to the action instead of conditions of approval based on the findings that we complete. Okay, so if everybody is ready, I'm going to go through the decision criteria. I'll be happy to answer any more questions in the end of this presentation.
Just
So
for the,
decision criteria number,
sorry, just
sorry?
a moment, Irene, just for the benefit of folks who are in attendance, when the chair was talking about earlier about instructions as far as when you have a concern, it has to be addressed to decision criteria. These next few slides are what our decision criteria are for the planning commission to review. So you'll want to pay attention to these, and we have what's up here in the packet on the testimony table and available to anybody at home who's willing to testify. Sorry, just wanted to be clear on that one. Yep. Go ahead, Irene, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So decision criteria, this decision criteria is listed in our development code under 6.320. That's the section of conditional use. And as I mentioned before, because of the significant change in the aesthetic of the pole, we're looking at this as a new application. If the changes were minor, then it will fall under a minor modification, but would be considered major modification. So decision criteria A is that the use is listed as a conditional use in the underlying district or approved by the commission as similar to conditional uses listed in the underlying district. So under R7 zoning district, utility facilities that are major is permitted through a conditional use. And in addition, this tower itself was approved under case file 08-018. In addition to this section of our code, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, are also the regular regulating body for telecommunications tower, and Bay's Code Chapter 7, Section 1455. We as local government towers, other than for siting and location purposes. So with that, this criterion is met.
Ms. Farrell, you're
Yes.
breaking up a little bit. Do you want to try turning your video off to see if that helps your signal a little bit?
Yeah, I can do that. Sorry about that.
And if we still have the issue, Irene, I'll take it on the slide advancement. So, but go ahead and give it a shot.
Okay, I can also, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. So let me know after I go through decision B if it's still breaking up. If not, then I'll keep going. Decision criteria B is the characteristics of the site are suitable for the proposed use and considering the size, shape, location, topography, existence of improvements and natural areas. While I mentioned that the changes will change the aesthetics of the pole and the new equipment with the new equipment and antennas, based on the direction of the federal code, staff believe that it will not substantially change the actual physical dimension of the site because the proposal will not change the tower and also the base station, the ground station of the site. I have included an excerpt from the federal code that I mentioned earlier in the previous criteria is a state or local government may not deny and shall approve any eligible facilities request for modification of an existing wireless tower or base station that does not substantially change the physical dimension of such tower or base station defines eligible facilities requests as including requests for the co-location removal or replacement of transmission equipment. So, and additionally, as I mentioned before, when we looked at the conditions of approval of case file 08-018, it did mention that the monopole shall be engineered, designed, constructed to allow the co-location of additional antennas in the future. Is my connection better this way? Or am I still breaking up?
Keep going, Yuri. We have it on screen here and obviously at home, so we'll keep trying.
Okay.
I think you've muted yourself though.
Oh yeah, I muted myself because I asked to my husband to stop going on his phone for a second. Hopefully this will work. I'm not sure. I don't know internet very well, but I'm trying in this findings. So we'll move on to decision criteria C. All transportation systems, public facilities, public services related to the proposed development have or can be improved to have adequate capacity to serve the proposed development at the time of the completion. So as I mentioned before, when I send this notice out to Public Works and other agencies who deal with the facilities and infrastructure of the area, there won't be any impact proposed with this improvements because there isn't any ground disturbance too on the site, and the nature of a cell tower, it doesn't require staff to be present on site. No traffic will be impacted in the long term, so we believe that this criterion is met. Let me know if there's any other issues. If not, move on to decision criteria D, which is the proposed use will provide adequate open space, landscaping, and aesthetic design to mitigate any possible adverse effects on surrounding properties and uses. I've included SBA Communications application, which shows the proposed site improvements on the far left is what it would look like once the antenna is installed, and then on the no, I'm wrong. The far right and then the far left, because I'm trying to understand what you guys are seeing on the screen. But yes, so that is kind of to illustrate the possible changes with this application. As I mentioned, the pole was approved back in 2008. The existing slimline pole was designed so that it meets the residential characters of the site, but the proposed improvements will really change that. Trees on Cherry Park Road provide some screening. The existing landscaping does not provide adequate screening for the pole for the residents at Southwest Kings Byway. So along with the equipment improvements, the applicant shall provide much needed renovation on the ground equipment shelter the existing pole, and also updated landscaping specifically on the east and southern portion of the facility, which faces southwest Kings Byway. Staff recommend for Planning Commission to consider a condition for a landscaping and maintenance plan to be submitted to ensure that there will be adequate screening for residents on Southwest Kings Byway, and that it will be maintained regularly. And as such, this criterion is conditionally met. Okay. Decision E, proposed use will not cause or nor result the creation of public nuisance, including but not limited to air, land, water degradation, noise, glare, heat, vibration, or other impacts that may be injurious to public health, safety, and welfare. So the pole itself doesn't emit any air or noise to its surrounding property. However, it's very well known that telecommunications tower emit radio frequency waves, also known as electromagnetic fields. According to the World Health Organization, which I included in the packet, is that the increased risk of brain tumor is not really established with the use of mobile phones. However, in the grand relative to our lifespan and our existence, the increased use of mobile phones are still pretty short term, and the technology is relatively new. So long-term effects can't be determined for sure at this time. So while the exposure to radio frequency is a concern, the Federal Communications Commission's also provided consumer fact sheet, which is attached in the staff report, to clarify that most cellular cell sites in urban suburban areas like ours has actually a radiated effective rate, radiated power of 15 to 10 watts. When it's measured, when you're measuring near a typical cell site on ground, it's shown that the ground level densities are well below the exposure limits recommended for microwave safety standards. Based on the application submitted and looking at the antennas of having 3 antennas on the site, it's pretty consistent to a typical cell tower as referenced on the fact sheet. So the applicant shall provide confirmation that the proposed improvements meet the FCC exposure guidelines, and as such, the criterion is conditionally met.
Marini, you're still breaking up a little bit. Can we take it on here locally in the room?
Yeah, let me just unshare screen myself.
Thank you.
Be just a moment, folks. We'll have it up here in just a minute. And folks at home, are you able to see decision criteria F? If you can, give me a thumbs up, please. Thank you. This is the final of the 6 decision criteria. The proposal satisfies the applicable provisions of this code. The findings show basically since 2008, the use and demand of cellular and mobile devices have significantly increased and become a utility. And instead of just using mobile devices just as a phone, many are relying on 4G LTE networks for daily activities. We all have seen that metamorphosis over the past decade or so. The improvements will serve current telecommunication needs for residents in the surrounding area. And when the existing pole was installed, the network was relied on a 3G or 3rd generation technology, which was slower with lower capacity. The retrofit increases the pole range to a higher frequency under the 4G LTE network. Appendix D within the packet is a page from T-Mobile's website to illustrate how the company is doing its nationwide campaign to increase the capacity of it. The improvements do increase the consumer demand, but it also, for a public benefit purpose, improves reliability for public safety agencies to deploy assistance for emergencies. And today, the responders rely on mapping and reliable connection to respond. We've reviewed the narrative and the intent. We believe that the applicant has satisfied the review criteria within the code. And assuming that the conditions of approval that would be adopted here tonight are satisfied and tied to the application, and is assumed that the criterion will be met. So we do recommend approval as a staff. We do have a couple of concerns, and they are outlined with conditions that are outlined in your proposed finding of fact, and that is the orange sheet in the packet. For those folks in the room, there's an orange sheet of that as well, which you can review as well. We do have conditions of approval that are outlined here. Here they are. We provide documentation to confirm that the facility meets the FCC guidelines pertaining to radio frequency exposure, that the applicant shall provide an updated exhibit to confirm the height of the pole with improvements in ground relative to the property line, that the applicant shall renovate the ground equipment shelter existing pole and update the landscaping specifically on the eastern and southern portion of the facility. That's obviously where the most direct visual exposure is to surrounding residents on Kings Byway. A landscaping and maintenance plan shall be submitted to ensure that there will be adequate screening, which will be maintained regularly. That would be an expectation. Notification to the FAA is required, so that is a typical process that would have to be taken care of. Relevant conditions of approval, those were the conditions that you saw from the case 13 years ago, will continue to apply, effectively apply for building permits, ensure that the FCC standards are set forth, and that this approval shall automatically expire 2 years from the date of the decision unless the approval is enacted through construction, establishment of the use, and so forth. So the effective date would be the date of the notice of decision. So they basically have a 2-year window to install the equipment as they design it, or they're back before this body for a new application. The building division has one condition, that is, of course, contacting them to begin submittal process for any building permits and any applicable trade permits, electrical, mechanical, and so forth. And with that, it is public testimony time, but before we do that, we as staff, Arini or I, will be happy to take any questions that the commission will have.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff? Commissioner Wittrin.
Yeah, in section B, we talk about substantially change, but that seems very subjective. What are we using to gauge what is substantially changed? Because when I look at measurements in the drawings and no longer a canister, and then now all the antennas are outside the canister, to me, instinctively, it looks like a pretty substantial change. So what are we using as a measurement tool to quantify that?
So based on the drawings that were provided and the improvements, the substantial change is the tower itself. The tower itself is getting addition, but it's not actually getting modified in terms of the height will possibly, and that's why we have it as a condition of approval to confirm the proposed height with the additions, but the height won't significantly change, and then the base also will not be altered at all. And there's no change in the location of the tower itself. There is additions to the tower in providing the antennas, but that's more of a capacity for the tower than it is that the tower is modified. I guess that's the base of that. Looking at the federal.
Seems like we're just taking chunks of it rather than the pole itself, which seems very narrow. But if you're saying the width of it is expanding at the top very significantly, that seems like a pretty substantial change. Now, from eyesight, that seems like a substantial change. But you guys say it's not. So I just was asking what we're using to quantify the tool. Is it a percentage? The percentage it's changing at the top must be very substantial, but it's not changing at the bottom. I get that.
I think, Mr. Whitman, I think one thing, it is a substantial enough change where it warranted coming before you. But it was, as far as, it's a cell phone tower now, it shall remain a cell phone tower later. So you're not fundamentally changing what the tower's existence is there for. It's not like we have a water tower that's getting cell phone equipment. That changes the composition or use of the tower. You're still, at the end of the day, having a telecommunications tower. You're also, by all accounts from the exhibits, having a situation where, yes, there's clearly an array at the top, which changes the aesthetic of it, but the height itself is not changing. And we've had, not in Troutdale, but there have been situations elsewhere where the cell phone towers grow in height in order to accommodate the new technology, and that's not the case here. So it's kind of in this halfway point. It was substantial enough that it warranted this hearing, but it's not fundamentally changing what it is, and that's a telecommunication tower.
And I get that. I guess it's just, if it's aesthetically changing and it's increasing by several feet now, and then a few more years down the road, it increases by several more feet, but it's not enough of a substantial change from what we're increasing now, but from where it was originally in 2008. But if they increase little by little, the homeowners of this area are going to keep on having to look at this thing grow and grow and grow. Once again, I was just trying to find out what metric we were using.
There's
So
a quantifiable standard that we can, it crosses a threshold of it. That was our interpretation of it.
okay.
Commissioner Prickett?
I have to make a statement. I know Connie Dickinson. I work with her at school. We have not discussed this issue at all. So I just want to let you know, I do know her.
Any challenge by the committee? Okay. Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Prickett?
Not at this time.
Okay. And I don't see any other hands up. I just wanted to clarify, in Ms. Farrell's presentation, she mentioned that this would be going to City Council. I believe the planning
Only if it's
commission.
appealed.
Okay. The planning commission will be the deciding party for this.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was only a process type 3 application, and that there is with every type 3 application, there's an appeal process with that.
Okay. And we, I'll go ahead and hear from the applicant before we take testimony. Okay. At this time,
I believe Mr. McAuliffe was on the call.
yes.
Yes, I am.
There you are, sir. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here tonight on behalf of T-Mobile Communications, who's looking to upgrade the facility. It is our structure. We own the tower, and we're just here to help them do so. The one thing that was kind of a stumbling block towards the end of the application, not the end, towards the end of this waiting period for the hearing, was a question of whether this is 5G. So I'm also come out and talk about that first off. This we call it L600. So basically there's 600 megahertz frequencies that we have licenses for. We're utilizing it for 5G, so low band 5G. It is no different than what is out there right now. I know there's a lot of concerns, a lot of bad information going around. So I understand the concerns. I've been doing this for 23 years. Back in 1996, right after the Telecom Act was adopted, which is the first piece of legislation that came from the federal government, basically said that they shall not, you can restrict where they're located to a certain extent. You can restrict what they look like, but you can't talk about health effects. Health effects is the big thing that the federal government did to protect this industry. I don't know if I agree with it or not, but that is the big thing that they did at that time. There was the second piece of legislation that came out in 2012. It was embedded in the Tax Welfare and Employment Act of, so was, if you didn't look for it, you would have missed it. But Telecom Act of 6409, that section comes back and kind of tweaks restrictions that legislative bodies can have on it, or jurisdictions can have on it. So again, they comes down to the point, they understand the industry needs to upgrade in order to meet the demands of our clients, or of our, gosh darn it, of our, can't think of the word right now, of our yeah, for the people that are on our, gosh darn it, I have multiple sclerosis, so I keep blaming that, and that's a horrible thing to do. But for our people that are on our system, we need to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And I think, well, not we, but T-Mobile's needs to meet their needs in order for them to be pertinent still. But one question that Commissioner Wittron had, I can answer that. I can provide some information where the federal government, the FCC, defines what is a substantial change. There are four points to it. One's height, one's the extension from the tower. The third is the number of cabinets that are provided on the ground. And the fourth one, I don't remember. That's a bad thing. I should. But there are 4 points that I can provide to Ernie, just so she can provide it to you all. Sorry, yes, sir.
Mr. McAuliffe, I think there's a reception, or anybody else who's on the call, please get in.
Sorry.
Very hard to hear.
You have some static or some buzzing.
Yeah. Let me can I turn off the video? If that helps. Is that better or not?
We still hear a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's still there.
Okay. Still there?
Let's try it.
Okay, sorry. Trying to think where I was, but I mean, there was 2 pieces of federal legislation kind of set out guidelines for how the industry is going to be handled by local jurisdictions. Back in the day, there was a lot of concern, a lot of big ignorance about what was what. The one thing that I can offer you is that, and it looks like that's one of the conditions that the Planning Commission be requesting of us, we can provide you with an electric emissions, electric emissions, I can't think of the word, but just a study that will show you exactly what will be produced by the site. You'll show that we're way below federal restrictions. So I can do that for you. The one thing I didn't do this original application, so I'm not sure what was, as far as stealthing, it's not stealthing, but lowering the appearance. If one thing we could do is make sure that the antennas are painted a green color like the tower is now. That way there's some continuation, at least, of what the structure is up. Anybody have any questions for me? I feel like staff did a really good job of presenting the application, and went over everything. I'd just be redundant at this point.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the commission?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a question for the applicant.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. McAuliffe, you quoted, this was my question, but I think you quoted, but I wanted to be sure that we had it on record again. My question was, is there a substantial change right now from the existing tower to what you're proposing. We are discussing increased, or maybe my apologies, or maybe I'm using inappropriately, maybe there is not increase, but I want you to confirm that to 600 megahertz frequency and whatever the FCC exposure is. You seem to have said something to the extent of what is there is not any different from what we are proposing is no different from what is up there right now. Could you please elaborate on that, confirm that, and also to the extent of if there is or there is not changes in the frequency of megahertz and to the FCC exposure?
Well, there's kind of a two-part. You asked whether the site was being substantially changed. It may appear that way, but according to the FCC, it's not a substantial change. I know that's how they define it. I know Chairman Whitford was looking for some kind of definition. Okay, I'm sorry.
Now, my apologies for interjecting. I would like to try to move away from what the interpretation or the definition of the semantic used by the FCC is. I would like to go to back to your words. You said what we are proposing is not different than what is up there right now. So my question to you is, what did you mean by that? And can you elaborate in technical terms as well?
Okay. Yes, we're going to change the frequencies that we're broadcasting in, and we're using. We're utilizing 600 megahertz. It's going to be what the site is, and we're going to use that for low band 5G. As far as emissions, we can't exceed the emissions that's in the OET 65. And that one, so we won't do that. And the studies I've seen, we never come close to doing so. And again, I offer y'all, there's my southern. I offer you an EME study, which will confirm that. I mean, me telling you doesn't have any backing to it. If you have a study that's run by professional engineers, that'll show you exactly what is going to be broadcasted near, what levels it's going to be, the emissions, and they will tell you exactly how that would affect the public. And again, we can't, according to the OET 65, we can't affect the public.
Okay. So Mr. Chair, if I may just want to conclude then, and Mr. McAuliffe, my apologies. We're really talking to lay people here. So I want to clearly understand in lay people terms.
Okay.
What you're proposing is not different aside from the obvious optical illusion of what we have, but it is not different from what is up there right now. That was your statement. Can you stand by that?
I mean, it's a facility that's going to be using licensed federal frequencies, and I don't know how to explain that outside of that.
Okay. I was using your words. You say in your statement, what is proposed is not different from what is up there right now. So I wanted to understand.
And I misspoke. I should have said it's different. What we're proposing is to use different frequencies up there in addition to what we're currently using. So I mean, the site, as the chairman, I think one of the commissioners was talking about, it's a cell site. It'll remain as a cell site. It's used for, it originally when we did this 23 years ago, it was used for voice. Then text came in. Then after that, now it's all data. That's what's driving the system. That's why 5G and having larger bands for capacity, we need that in order to be relevant to our customers. Perfect. Does that answer? And I kind of feel like I'm dancing around your.
Yes, it seems to me so too, but that's at a certain point we have to continue with this conversation. So, and we did that. So thank you very much. I appreciate your comment.
You're welcome.
Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions, Commissioner Mamoni?
Hi, did you say it's okay for me to speak?
Go ahead, Commissioner Allen.
Okay. So the question that I have for you, and it's kind of along the same lines. I understand we're going for a broader bandwidth and changing frequency. The real question is, are we increasing the watts per square meter, the power that's transmitted?
I can't tell you that, Chairman Allen.
Right.
And that's why I keep going back to the fact that we get an EME study, we can present that to the commission. I think that would answer a lot of questions, put a lot of people at ease. I mean, even if I said there isn't an increase, that would just be coming from me. Again, I'm a layman just like you all. I'm not an engineer. So I can only tell you what the industry is permitted to do by their licenses from the FCC. And that's what they do in order to keep the licenses that are really expensive. I probably didn't answer your question, Chairman Allen, but
Any other questions, Commissioner Allen? Commissioner?
You got a copy of this on your,
Sir?
the original findings of. Page number 2.
Oh, 08.
Yeah. One moment.
I would like to, there isn't a chat function here, but I was able to find the section that I used to determine the substantial change in FCC's commission rule. And I can certainly send that in over to as an email to on the website, so it's available to the public also. But in section 1.6100B7 of the commission's rule, it provides that a modification substantially changes the physical dimensions of an eligible support structure if it entails any excavation or deployment outside of the current site. So this addition of the antennas does not change, does not require any groundwork or excavation in order to support all the antennas that this application will introduce. And that's how that substantial change was determined by through the findings that we did.
Okay, thank you.
To Mr. Wydilla's request, we're going to screen share now the notice of decision from 2008 that showed the conditions of approval at that time.
Yeah, page number 2, summary.
I'm sorry, page number 2, summary?
Yeah, page number 2 at the top paragraph, summary.
This section right here?
Yes, that fourth sentence there. Said the monopole will include canisters for future co-location of additional antennas. So it appears when it is approved, there is a tacit approval of more expansion.
It's engineered in such a way, but again, the facts of the case and the testimony of the case at the time suggested that, you know, if you're making a visible change, while it may not be a substantial change from an FCC regulatory standpoint, from a lay perspective, from an optic visual impact perspective, it crossed the threshold for us as a staff to bring it back to Planning Commission and to notify the public of it. But to Irini's point and to the applicant's point, on the FCC threshold level, it's not considered a substantial change.
Right, but I guess I'd go to the sentence prior to that, which is no antennas will be visible at this facility.
Which is why we brought it back.
Right.
It contradicts itself.
Well, which that is a significant change. Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Waddell?
I'm sorry?
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Okay. Before we take public testimony, I just want to comment on something. Usually don't do this, but that was received from Judith Huntsman and Darlene Woods. And I just want to clarify a couple of points in the letter. One, that the questioning if this was being hidden from the FCC, I don't know that definitively, but I would really doubt that we would be able to hide it. And also would like to know why community wasn't notified until April 3rd of informal meetings. Anytime that an applicant meets with staff, often that is of an informal nature, and those are not public meetings. And they're not noticed, and basically the rest of us aren't attending those. And this is the first public hearing, and this was noticed in time. And so, you know, I just want to be clear that the rules are pretty structured and they are being followed.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, and let's see what else. And the planning commission doesn't get paid for this. We're not representing anybody other than the citizens of Troutdale. And so, you know, our pockets aren't being lined by anybody. Often people say, why would you ever do this? But it's something we do just to give back to the community. I just wanted to clarify a couple of those points. Sure. Okay, and so what we'll do now is we'll begin to take public testimony on the criteria, and we will start with people wishing to testify as a proponent to the application. Okay, and so with that, is anyone wishing to testify as a proponent? Raise your hand. Okay. Anyone wishing to testify as an opponent? Opponent.
Opponent?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm opposed.
Okay, so if you would come forward, that'd be great.
Sorry, forget me.
To the right seat, if you don't mind. Thank you.
And your timing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so if you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is Judy Huntsman. I live at 1250 Southwest Kings Byway, right across the street from this entourage thing. I just want to say greetings to each of you and thank you for letting us come to this hearing to share our grievances. And a special thank you, as I said, to Irene for all the help that she's given us along the way. Anyway, so here we are again at a hearing to discuss the cell phone tower for the second time. I was at the first hearing and so was Darlene. The first was in 2008, as you know, and for the second time, Darlene and I object to the additions being proposed to add to the pole and adamantly would like it to totally be removed from our neighborhood. We respect the SBA and T-Mobile representative and realize that he is just performing his sales duties. In 2008, we were told by T-Mobile that the tower would not cause any side effects. We now know that that statement was not true. Fast forward to now, there has been numerous reports, research, documentations by independent sources regarding these towers and their side effects. Since the pole was erected, I have developed a sleep disorder, vision problems, stabbing pains all over my body like you were getting a voodoo doll. They also go in my head. I thought I was having a stroke, so off to the doctor I went. I have extreme fatigue as well as a sleep disorder. And it makes me feel as though I was having a stroke with these pains. But they come and they last for maybe a minute or two and they're gone. And they may come back for another week. I have had my same doctor for 22 years. She has done many blood tests, CT scans, ultrasounds, x-rays, MRIs to no avail. It has affected Darlene with headaches, high blood pressure, which she never had prior to the erection of the pole, plus the stabbing body pains and head pains. We respect the church's need for income. We realize the pole is on their property. And in 2008, we were also told that there would be a 250-gallon propane tank in the same little area that they have for this pole. Well, to us, this is a 250-gallon bomb sitting there waiting to kill us all. Not to be smart alecky, but yes, it is the church's right to do what they want on their property. But they do not have the right to interfere or impose the physical and visual effects on us. If they and T-Mobile and SBA insist on leaving the pole in place, maybe it's time for them to share in the wealth, since it is our lives they are ruining. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope this matter can be settled amicably. That's all I got to say. But I do want to add one more thing. I'm sorry. In 2008, when they said that they would maintain that pole, they have never, ever been back to paint that pole. They said would do it every year. They have not. It is very unsightly to us. I mean, I can't see it from my front window, but let me go out in my backyard and try to relax. And there's this thing sticking up. I mean, we don't want the pole at all. From what it stands right now, that is causing all these physical ailments. And it's lowering our property values. People or T-Mobile can say that it doesn't. I have talked to appraisers, and their advice to us was that it not necessarily lowers your property value, but if someone comes and looks at your house and then sees another one they like, they're going to go, oh, but that one had that pole over there. So hence we lose the sale. And with that, I shall close and say thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak as an opponent to the application?
Hi, my name is Irina Shkarinsky, and I live on 1286 Southwest Kings Byway, Troutdale, Oregon. My family and I moved to the Troutdale area 7 years ago. We bought our first house, and my husband's family business relocated to the Troutdale area at that time too. And we were planning to live in this house for many, many years and to raise our family of 3 small children. We love our neighborhood, and we spend a lot of time outside in the cul-de-sac where the neighborhood kids play with my kids every single day. Our house is located in the cul-de-sac, directly behind, in a very close proximity to the T-Mobile cell tower. Since we moved here, I have always had concern about the T-Mobile tower, but didn't know how to get my voice heard. When I got the notice in the mail about the T-Mobile modification plan, I was shocked to hear that the city of Troutdale wants to add a 4G network to this tower. My biggest concern is for the health safety of the kids who live on this block, including my own 3 children. There have been numerous reports of kids and teachers getting diagnosed with cancer and having all sorts of health issues after a cell tower was installed on elementary middle school grounds. Although some may state that effects are unknown, I don't want to have any of our children in a neighborhood at risk. I'm here to defend my children because they can't come up here and talk. I'm their mother, and I'm gathered here in union with the rest of the parents on this block right behind me. This block houses a lot of school-age children. And unlike a lot of other school-age children, these kids actually go outside and play. And our neighborhood is our little community. Spending time outside is important to us. These children play outside every day, and this tower is in front of our front yard. It is right in front of our eyes. We see it all the time. It's literally feet away. I can easily say that all the other parents that are on this call can 100% without a doubt agree with me and support everything that I have to say. We're all very concerned about the modification and absolutely against the cell tower upgrading to 4G compatibility. This 100-foot 4G network tower is not a good place in our neighborhood. It's only a matter of time that we'll be here again discussing 4G, a 5G upgrade. Not only am I against this modifying the tower and upgrading to faster network, I'm advocating for this tower to be completely removed from our neighborhood. A tower like this should be placed further away from housing development. We do not feel safe living in a neighborhood with radiation exposure that puts me and my family and all the rest of the families on this block at risk. Please stop the modification of the cell tower. We're all very concerned about the health impact that it can be on our families. Alongside the road going out the Troutdale Outlet Mall, there's a sign that says Tree City USA Arbor Day Foundation. This sounds like a very inviting, welcoming city that has environmental consideration. When I look out to my street from my front door, I see a large 100-foot tower monstering over our homes. This does not look environmentally friendly neighborhood and doesn't line up with what is advertised along the road into our neighborhood. Do not ruin this gem in the East County. Please take some time to review some of the articles that I have attached on my paper. I also wanted to add to the criteria B. It says here, the monopole should be engineered, designed, and constructed so as to allow the collaboration of additional antennas in the future. The additional antennas, could someone explain what would that be?
I'm sorry, 5 minutes have expired.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak as an opponent to the application? Okay. Sure. Oh, you can change your.
Okay. My name is Heather Sager and I live at 1322 Southwest Kings Byway. In the pictures at the very beginning, where it's showing the different views of the pole, the second picture is the view out my front door or out my front windows. It's the view out of my bedrooms. That's all I see. I moved in there 12 years ago, 12 and a half years ago, and all of my pictures of my kids growing up, playing outside, playing baseball, in the snow, everything has that pole in the background. So, and I've put up with it, you know, I didn't know I had a choice not to, and I probably don't, but I can't imagine the look of it changing to have all the stuff on the top. So that's all I really wanted to say, and just to ask, would you want to look at that thing every day? So, because I don't.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify as an opponent? Okay. Any neutral parties wishing to testify this evening?
Sorry, I have my hand raised, but I'm on Zoom and I don't know if you noticed that it was raised.
I'm sorry. Okay, so go ahead, Ms. Dickinson.
Thank you so much, commissioners, and all parties involved for coming to the meeting. As the representative of the T-Mobile individual said, whether it's true or not, or whether there has been legislation countering the statement made by, I apologize, whomever he quoted, saying that T-Mobile and telecommunications systems were not to be held accountable for the health risks of these structures. There has been independent studies and a large amount of research currently that indicates that there is a health effect, that it is negative. And while there are other areas around the Troutdale environs where a cell tower like this could be placed with less effect to the community, I can understand that on T-Mobile's perspective, it's cheaper to alter something that they currently already have instead of having to remove that and place it in a more community conscious location. So I'm not going to argue about the health effects. I think the research is coming out to counter that, and hopefully there will be legislation too that will hold the telecommunications companies accountable for the damage done. As they say, we don't know yet because there have not been enough studies, but unfortunately the studies that have been done by independent researchers, they do counter what the telecommunications industries are telling us. As far as the existing pool, I am renter here in the cul-de-sac. I do not own property, and so it was very difficult for me to put my hat in the ring, so to speak, because I am not the physical owner of the property here. I, however, see it every single time I walk out into the cul-de-sac. If T-Mobile is going to go through with changing this array, and if the city of Troutdale is going to go through with allowing T-Mobile to change this array, there are aesthetically pleasing options out there available that T-Mobile should have to pay for. If you're going to put up these giant antennas, then camouflage them, take care of the existing pole, repaint it, make it look like one of the trees. We have a beautiful grove of, I don't know if they're sicas or if they're cedars or what they are, right next to the church. It can easily be camouflaged into that tiny forest grouping in a way that would not be an eyesore, would not be something that, as my neighbor Heather said, is constantly in all of our photographs, and is something that we really don't want to look at. Eventually, I hope legislation will be available that can counter the health risks or possible health risks of this pole. But as that is not yet possible, I say if the Troutdale Commission is planning to go forward with this, then please make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. Try to minimize the impact you're having on the area around you. And please don't just let them slam up giant metal things in our front yard. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify? I'll open that back up as an opponent. Possibly got missed. Okay. Any neutral parties wishing to testify this evening? Okay, yes. Go ahead.
I'm Gail Burke. My home address is actually 34231 Southeast Holman Road, which is not in the city of Troutdale. However, I am the president of the Corporation for Cherry Park Presbyterian Church, which is why I'm speaking right at the moment. It was brought up that the pole has not been maintained or painted. They did come in and paint it. I know of at least one occasion where they've painted it. It is not peeling or rusting or any of that nature. It's just gray. They maintain the building. They've painted it so that it matches the color scheme, happens to match the color scheme of the other buildings around the church. And we, as the church body, think that they maintain the property that they're leasing from us very adequately. So that's the I'm obviously for it. I know in one of the opponents, they said, well, we're only there on Sunday morning. That's not true. We have had Head Start in there since that poll went in. We have had 2 different preschools, and we have various activities during the week. So we're there, we don't live there, but we are there other than on Sunday morning. Thank you for allowing me to give you this input.
Thank you.
No. Mr. Chair, just for point of clarification for Ms. Dickinson, can you state the address that you're living at? You said you were a renter, but we would need the address for the record.
Thank you. 1274 Southwest Kings Byway, right across pretty much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other neutral parties wishing to testify this evening? Okay, with that, I'm going to ask if the applicant wants to. Tom, do you want to rebut? Any?
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to rebut. I just want to give some information to Irina about what co-locations would look like. The pole from the 70-foot level to the 100-foot level is engineered to take on 3 additional carriers. Right now, if they don't come in and ask for permission to be outside the canisters, they'll be inside the canisters. But right now, T-Mobile's in position with their antennas and the equipment we need to put up there. We can't be inside the canister anymore because the equipment overheats too darn quickly, the radios. That's one thing. And just the antennas themselves are too big to be encapsulated in the canister.
Okay, anything else? I'm going to say no. Okay, is that it, sir?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, that's it. Unless anybody has other questions.
Do you have any questions of the applicant before we proceed? At this time, I would entertain a motion for the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Okay.
Say something about them being in the church. Please.
That's not how this, I'm sorry. We have a procedure that we have to follow.
There's a motion on the floor. I'll second it.
All right. Okay, the motion on the floor is to close the public hearing, and it is seconded. All in favor of closing the public hearing at this time?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed. Okay. Want to start? Let me start.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Staff have any additional data?
There's, as you saw in the packet, there was some information supplied by some of the folks in the room and on the call about potential health effects. There's also some studies from the WHO. We continue to see, from at least governmental authorities or public health authorities, comments, and I was going to read you one additional one we found. This was from the American Cancer Society, but they're quoting the FCC. And it says, just stated here, radio frequency emissions from antennas used for cellular and personal communication service transmissions result in exposure levels on the ground that are typically thousands of times below safety limits. These safety limits were adopted by the FCC based on the recommendations of expert organizations and endorsed by agencies of the federal government responsible for health and safety. Therefore, there is no reason to believe that such towers can constitute a potential health hazard to nearby residents or students. So when staff has established its position for recommendation, and particularly on the component, the decision criteria, E, we have to use the data that we typically see from these types of authorities when there is questions. That is not to discount or dissuade or suggest that the Planning Commission shouldn't weigh also the testimony or the evidence submitted by folks who have a different opinion or present evidence to the contrary. So your job as the commission is to sort that out. We can't make that decision for you. In staff's estimation, we believe we have to basically go by precedent, and we see that the FCC and the other government agencies, as well as even some larger nonprofit entities, are saying that this is not an issue. The other thing to make mention of is radio frequencies are everywhere. It's not just emissions from cell phone towers. It is a door at a supermarket, microwave. So one thing to consider too is, why is it just cell phone towers that are being looked at in this case, or in certain cases? They have. So again, I'm not saying this to discount, credit any of the testimony. Again, that's just an explanation as to how and why we arrived at the recommendation we did.
Okay. Questions for staff from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Chris, this is a question for you. And again, I'm not going in any direction. This is not a political statement. It's just trying to understand better where we're coming from. In my experience over the years, dealing with cell tower and co-locations and location of these settings, there was always the desire to relegate these facilities to a less prominent urban areas. In simple words, many ordinance prohibits the towers in residential zoning. Here we are not only in proximity of residential development, we are within a residential zoning district. So my question is, and I don't know if this is pertinent to you, I don't know how long your longevity with the organization is, what was the rationale in 2008 when a conditional use of this nature within, I'm not a computer, but I can try to look at a site plan. We are really 60 feet away from homes across this cul-de-sac. What do you think was the rationale for granting such a lenient approval? Recognize, of course, that that's why I did preface my conversation. This is not a political statement. I try to understand. I also understand that public perception is not a rational basis for revoking or not approving a conditional use permit. Nevertheless, here we are. What it seems to me, in my experience over the years, and somewhat over the edge or on the edge. What do you think was the rationale for approving an antenna of this magnitude in a residential district so close to residential homes?
So thank you for the question. To be clear, existing staff anyway was not at the city back in 2008. That's not for us. But however, what we do have, and I will share on the screen, is summary that was provided of the decision criteria at the time. And so, again, much like we're doing tonight, where you're focusing on the decision criteria, considering a variety of factors, it will be the adopted finding for this section says that T-Mobile gave preference to non-residential areas if possible, or co-locating on existing structures. There were no existing towers available at the time. And after they investigated several non-residential sites, this location was suitable. Positioning where other towers are. But I would probably defer to the commission.
Chris, we cannot hear you. Just we don't understand anything you say.
Alan needs to mute.
Yeah. Could everyone just mute unless you're speaking? Because we're getting a lot of feedback here.
And forgive me, I'm just going to mask because sometimes I get muffled here. But basically, they typically look at according to the findings from 13 years ago, they typically look at non-residential areas first as a preference. If they were unable to find one or co-locate with an existing tower, they then at this particular property. And that was the rationale that you see on the screen as to what was adopted at the time. But again, disclosure, staff was not here, neither Irini nor myself were around to have knowledge or have understanding of the full detail there.
Of course. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Chris.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Allen.
I do have a question in case I'm missing something here. So I've been looking through the packet, trying to get an answer to my question on what we expect the power to be from this thing. And I see where we're talking about power per channel, which actually is relatively low. But what I don't know, and I haven't found it yet, is how many channels we're talking about. Am I missing that? Is that somewhere in the packet?
Irini, I don't know if you have knowledge of that one, or if that'll have to be deferred to the applicant. So desired by the chair.
This might have to be referred to the applicant. I don't have it in the top of my head right now.
Can the applicant respond to that particular question if possible?
I'm sorry. You're looking for the number of frequencies that we'd be utilizing?
So in the packet before us, trying to get an answer to how much power we're talking about. There's references to typical power per channel. However, I don't know how many channels we're talking about.
Right. Commissioner Allen, I don't know either. That's why I suggest and really encourage y'all to require us to do an EME. That's the electromagnetic emissions. With that study, we can get that done. It'll address all those questions. Again, I'm not an RF engineer. I'm just going to come in here to do the land use for SBA and T-Mobile. So sorry, I can't help you out there, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm trained in radar and communications. I just don't do cell towers, so I don't know the answer to this question.
Other questions from the commission? You know, one of the things I thought was interesting in 2008 was it didn't look like a typical cell phone tower. And I do agree that this would be somewhat of a change from what we have today. I think it's one thing to look out and see a pole, but it's something else to see a full array. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Mamoni.
thank you very much for to be so kind to allow me again. This is actually a question to you, sir. You were, if please, I'm making an assumption here. If I'm overreaching, let me know. You probably were on the Planning Commission in 2008, and maybe Commissioner Prickett as well. What made you think in those days that this was okay, and what make you think, assuming that you think this way today, that it is a substantial change? What has changed in your opinion? Is it just this projection of these three elements, these three propeller, let's call it propeller for lack of better English. These are T's that are project 4 feet away from the pole and then on a T of 4 feet. So you must have had, I must imagine, a different perspective, a different view about what this tower was supposed to be and mean and represent. And it seems to me that, and I want to put words in your mouth, sir, is that you're coming away today with a different perspective. And I would like to understand from your experience, benefit from your experience, how did you see the evolution of this element?
Personally, you know, I think somewhat the industry's evolved. So you've got different equipment than what you had back in 2008. So, you know, I do think that, you know, that's a factor, but also too, I'm hearing and reading a lot that it is substantially below any level of any type of human hazard. But I think one of the things that did, and I don't want to speak for the other commissioners, that helped this thing along aesthetically was, in particularly, it did not resemble what we were looking at as a typical cell phone tower pole at that time. It was actually painted, and I heard gray. I thought it was brown, but I could be wrong.
It's green.
Green.
Shining
Yeah.
through because it hasn't been painted.
Sort of olive.
I watched every year.
So does that help? Okay. Anything to add?
Yes, thank you.
Well, matter of fact, at the time, it met all the criterion. And as you said, actually, I don't recall the meeting at all after reading this. But if it met the criteria back then, I voted for it.
Mm-hmm.
Chair Stephenson.
Commissioner Prickett.
I recall part of the reason was it was, again, like you said, it wasn't a pole and it didn't look like a typical cell phone tower. Two, I think the other thing was that if the reception in other areas weren't applicable to the tower because they couldn't get it high enough to send out good reception, and it'd be drop-offs in cold zones, if I remember right. If it was located in a commercial area, because we are on a hillside. So again, it has to be, a lot of it has to be clear of other obstructions. But if I remember right, that's part of why we passed it. And again, it was because it didn't look like a typical cell tower.
And based on the location, it was.
Right.
I guess I would say enhance or even enable coverage to some extent. Okay. All right. Commissioner Allen, sorry.
Hi. So although I ask about power for the benefit of the public, from what I can tell, they are stating it's below the limits that are set by the FCC. So I don't think that my question is something that it would allow us to deny the application. It's just something I was curious about. And I would suspect that members of the commission that are more experienced than I am would be able to confirm my assumption there.
All right. Okay. Any other discussion? Oh, Commissioner Prickett. No? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask you for, is my video gone? Sorry, my video seems to be able.
Yeah, you're still there. We just need to see you.
Oh, you stopped my video. Okay, sounds okay. So a couple of points of reflection here. I have evolved during this evening about my thinking about this case. You know, I found it originally myself in agreement with the staff. It is my sense that my concern is not on how the tower is built or even the expansion of the tower. It is where the tower is sited. I do not believe that what the applicant is proposing right now to be a substantial or major modification. To me, it's fine. When you look at the scale, 100-foot pole, a collocation of a platform, 4 feet by 4 feet. In the great scheme of things, there's no change whatsoever. But I start to become more aware about the issue of location of this tower. And so I'm going to propose something for consideration, of course, because I can see 2 possibilities here in my preferred option. And one that I believe to be a Solomonic solution in some respect. There was consideration about, and many jurisdictions do that, to dress up these towers. I did it in the Midwest as well, as a tree, as a pine tree, as a ponderosa, as a giant cactus or whatever. But I think that under the umbrella and the scope of responsibility and the latitude that are afforded to a planning commission, there is also the one that over time, when confronted with different situations, and I'm going to be very careful the way I introduce this, really to input a condition with a limitation. So my proposal to the commissioner is that we could go two ways. Obviously, there is the third option to agree with the staff as I originally did, but these are the 2 conditions. One is we approve the changes as proposed by the applicants, but we put a term of limitation. This conditional use will expire in 10 years. And after 10 years or before 10 years, T-Mobile has a responsibility to move their antenna in a more suitable place, which I would like to have a conversation with the commissioner to see if do we really want to put cellular tower in residential, in the middle of residential district, which is usually not a protocol done by any other municipality. The other one is really, as somebody suggested already, to have this tower dressed up in a different way, like a tree or something that is not that offensive, let's call it for lack of better English, to the community. But I go back to my outstanding point is really with the logistics, is in the middle of a residential district, and we're not talking a residential district with limited, with very large density. We're talking LDR 5. What are we talking here? We have LDR, single family residential 7. We have an antenna 60 feet away, and clearly there's a private property, but the city has jurisdiction to decide where to place this facility. And maybe this can trigger a conversation at city level with the planning commission, or where there are more suitable places for this facility. Recognizing that this facility are indispensable to the way we function everyday life, and even people that object to them use items that they're use resources from this facility. So in the ability of the commission is also to put a limitation on terms. I'm not against what I suggested right now, put a limitation within 10 years, the applicants find himself a different location. And this affords also the city to have a comprehensive study about where, specifically logistically, this area might be found. And hopefully, we're gonna all agree that it can be as far as possible away from a residential district. Or if the commission don't agree with this, because I know I'm taking a tangent here and a different, that at least we go to the extent of, as a condition, add that the pole does not look like a pole anymore. Again, there is no dramatic changes in my mind. A platform with 3 antennas does not change what it is. It's a pole. It was a pole, it is a pole. It's not a major outstanding change, substantial change. But at least we put the condition that, because the market is out there, for this tower to look in a completely different way.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramoni. Any discussion on that? I don't know that we can we put a sunset on?
That's what I'm looking at right now, just
Okay.
to see if that's a possibility.
I don't know. Yeah. Oh, Commissioner Allen?
I'm going to need another minute, Mr. Chair, to look
Okay.
at that. So please
All right.
go ahead and take any other questions. But
Okay, so we're waiting on that one to see if there could be a sunset on a conditional use. Not quite sure, we're looking that up. Any other recommendations? Conditions?
Okay, so in the development code, there's a reference about expiries of decision for types of applications. And as we referenced earlier tonight, conditional use permit, once acted upon, typically is perpetual, provided it doesn't get modified or changed. Also, if nobody does any construction within a 2-year period, then that decision that you make expires, and then somebody would have to apply. I'm going to read from the code. It says, except as otherwise specifically provided in a specific decision. In this code, the final decision shall be made based on the schedule of decision expiration. The conditional use that's being applied for tonight is a 2-year. So it suggests.
Chris, we can't hear you very well.
All right, so let me try.
And Rich, can you mute, please?
Okay, sorry, I'm going to unmask myself again. I apologize. So I think what it's saying here is that you may, as a planning commission, have that legal latitude to apply a expiry on a decision, or a requirement to have it be reapplied for after a certain period. Now, if you choose to do this, the staff request would be that you set aside a decision tonight and have our legal counsel review that possibility, so you're not entering into some situation where it could be appealable or potentially in violation of the land use decision making in Oregon land use law. So it seems to suggest you may have that possibility. And we can certainly table, you can choose to continue the hearing to a future date. But otherwise, it would just be by standard. We usually just keep them as they are, that they're approved, and that if they're not acted upon in 2 years, you have to reapply.
Okay. Commissioners, how do you feel about that? The possibility of a sunset, if that's legally possible. Do we want to continue the hearing so we find out where we stand legally with that? Or do you want to proceed?
There is another option, and this is also a little precarious, but it's also available to your disposal. If you choose to deny the modification tonight, the tower effectively becomes a non-conforming structure. That does not mean that the tower has to be taken down. It just means it was previously approved.
Right.
And it is allowed to stay even though it currently does not meet the conditional use standard that has been applied for tonight. That could potentially, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but that could suggest to the applicant that there really isn't much of a path forward to having this modification, let alone potentially future modifications to that pole on that site, and could prompt maybe a re-examination of the community to see where a better tower location may be. You have that option as well. That carries risk with it as well. And I remind you that the applicant, much like anybody else who's provided testimony tonight, can appeal that decision. So you may want to tread carefully on that thought if that's what you want to do too.
Okay. All right, any thoughts on our direction?
I would say also try to continue on that. I'm gonna check my video. Conditional use, there is a revocation clause too.
Yes.
Because if you're denying a permit, it is still going to the FCC rule, the federal rule that we have, and that could be really kind of, it will be pretty risky, but there is within the conditional use, there's a revocation where we can initiate a type 3 proceeding on the grounds that the application or other the applicant included false materials or the conditions of approval have not been complied with and are not being maintained. That is another avenue where you can put you may put conditions of approval in how the community seeks to fit or any commission deem real. And then that is another avenue for you. You can.
One of the previous conditions had not been met.
Correct.
Sorry.
I think you were going in and out, Irene.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Whitmer?
Any discussion on Mr. Ramoni's other idea about making it more aesthetically pleasing for the neighborhood? That way the church keeps their income and it makes it more palatable for the community. What are our options there?
I would just say for me personally, it would be a tough lift from where it is today to what I think it's a substantial change. And I would like to see something aesthetically done as a condition.
I agree.
And you have that right through a conditional use approval to put
Right.
that condition on there.
Anyone else on that subject as far as aesthetics? Commissioner?
I know that the Daffodil Tower, water tower, has had things added to it because I can see it outside my dining room door when the trees aren't in bloom. It's in a residential zone as well. So there are ways to make it look aesthetic because they paint the same color as the tower, so you really don't pay attention to it as much. But then it's not a pole, it's more a round cylinder. But they also have a cell tower not too far from there. In the back behind the restaurant and youth self-storage, there's a huge tower there. And there's also one on Mount Hood College property, I think, somewhere. So, I mean, they're there, but there's not a whole lot. I mean, the area has built up a lot since 2008. So if they could make it aesthetically pleasing, that might be an idea. I know they can't remove it because it's because I don't think, in my view, in my opinion, they haven't violated their conditional use permit for the original tower. So. But I agree with Commissioner Whitten and Mamoni that if there's a way we can aesthetically improve it.
Go ahead, Commissioner Prickett.
I think that'd be another option that we should look at. Otherwise, let's postpone the hearing until we get a legal verification, legal decision on the other issue. Whether we can have a sunset clause or not.
Yeah, so we'd be looking at a legal opinion on the ability to have the conditional use permit expire.
Well, and I think that that's a critical thing you just said, conditional use or conditional use permit, because technically conditional use as it is in the current iteration of the code is an approval and not a permit. A permit you can put an expiry to. You may not be able to necessarily on conditional use and that on the decision. So that's why we want to get that legal opinion on it, because that, even though that's really small semantically, that could have a big impact on it. So that's why we would seek a continuation of the hearing if you wanted to explore that option. And to be clear, also, staff has no objection whatsoever if you wanted to add an aesthetic component to a condition of approval. We nearly put it on in our effort, but we did not. But we believed it was going to come up anyway.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I agree with the director. I agree with Chris' consideration. I think semantic is important. We are walking a fine line, and so we better be careful about what we're proposing. And I think verification with the office of the city attorney is relevant. But also, I think that by postponing the decision, the commissioner afford themselves the latitude to have more information on a 360-degree, really, not just on the Solomonic, what I call the Solomonic proposal, but also in putting a condition about this tower looking something different. There are typology outside there. There is a market, as I said before. I used it in my past in other municipality jurisdiction where we really dress up these towers in a specific way. Also because, not to trivialize the issue, some people say, just make it look like the sky so it's invisible. Well, we introduce another setting of problem potentially. We have to have potential approval from the FAA because if you make a pole of this height invisible, might could generate another set of outstanding issues. So I think postpone it and afford the staff the latitude to have a conversation with the city attorney and test the water for, can we sunset this? Can we put a condition of term limitation, which was my experience in other municipality. But of course, we are talking about Troutdale, so it's relevant. Talking about a condition specifically about how to dress up this antenna, so that when we reconvene next time, we don't have to try to go on a debate again, openly debate about creating specification on the run, on the fly. But we have clear, tested, legally defensible solution for the commission and for the city, because again, the integrity of the code in the city is paramount. So I again, Chris, thank you very much for their clarification. It was very, very, very subtle, but very, very, very important. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we would look at continuing the hearing to a date certain, so that would be, I believe, May 12th.
May 12th is full from a docket perspective. May 26th, we were intending to also have a special meeting due to our docket load. We could accommodate it on May 26th, so about a month from now, 4 weeks from now.
Okay, and does that cause us any time issues with the applicant?
Irene, I don't believe we're running into the 120-day clock window. Are we okay on that front? Do you recall?
It's 90 days and we will be fine as long as we make the determination by June 24th.
Yeah, and there would be one other potential after that.
All right. And
Are we gonna be within also the time allotted for appeal, just to be safe? Since we're talking to be safe, Irene, if there is an appeal, are we gonna be staying within 120s?
No.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna get a legal opinion.
Go ahead, Irene.
Well, the 90-day deadline is just for decision. So if there is an appeal, that doesn't follow with that timeline.
Starts over. Okay, and so we are going to, staff is going to check with the city attorney to see about conditional use expiration.
Yep, we'll give you the legal opinion on that, and we would also craft a proposed condition of approval that can remark on an aesthetic. There's a couple ways you can go about doing it. You can try to suggest a design yourself, or you can require the applicant to go through a site development review where they have to provide that, and it could be notified to the neighborhood through a type 2 application as a follow-up. I mean, there's a couple of ways. You don't have to say it must look like a Doug fir or ponderosa pine. You can require future design to be.
Yeah, isn't that covered in D?
Well, it would be. So I guess a question I would have for research would be, with this array being 100 feet in the air, how many freestanding poles are in the area where they have an array at that height? It seems like a lot of them are less than that, if it's a freestanding pole. And I know this isn't a good example, but whenever I'm driving downtown, I look at that big tower in the West Hills. And I still to this day wonder how that ever went in. I just don't want to be the second one. So if we could find out similar towers, and then also too, if maybe discuss with the applicant about aesthetic plans.
Okay.
So we have an idea before we condition it.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone? Is that okay? Put that in the form of a motion.
I mean, we have our checklist, so if you we only need to continue the hearing
Okay.
or vote to continue the hearing to May 26th.
I move that we continue the hearing to May 26th.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue the hearing for case file LU 0005-2021 T-Mobile cell site modification until date certain of May 26, 2021. And if we could call the roll, please. Do we need
And
a
part
roll
of that
call for that?
motion is specific questions to be answered.
At that time,
Yes.
correct?
I mean, we'll have it ready for you regardless.
Won't be none.
All right, so I think because, I
Okay,
think we have to call roll.
Commissioner Richard,
Yes.
Sorry.
Would that would be de novo, right?
Yes, it would.
It's a continuation. It's not a.
Right.
The same hearing.
It's the same hearing.
It's a continuation.
Okay.
Okay, I'll begin the
Okay, go ahead.
roll call to the continuation. Commissioner Wittrin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Waidila,
Yes.
Commissioner Mamoni,
Yes.
Commissioner Prickett,
Yes.
Chair Stephenson,
Yes.
Commissioner Allen,
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Case file is continued until May 26th.
And for folks who were notified, you will receive additional notification in the mail reminding you of the continuation of the hearing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I too read that thing from Cancer Society. You need to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, will there be public to be heard that in the continuation?
Will there, I'm sorry,
Will there be public testimony? Yes, there would. Because there's new,
yes.
since
Thank
there's
you.
something new being added in, yes, there would be testimony. Okay. Thank you. All right.
As mentioned at the top, the second item on your hearing agenda tonight was the housing needs analysis adoption. At the request of staff, we are going to table that to your next meeting, which is going to be your regular meeting on May 12th, Wednesday, May 12th at 7. If we had nothing further, I guess we can move into staff communications. All right, so with that note, staff communications, your next meeting is on May 12th. You will have 2 hearings that evening. One will be for that housing needs analysis adoption. The other will be for is it a special variance, Rini?
Yep, it'll be a special variance for a property in Sturgeon Electric in the north side of I-84.
Additional calendar items, obviously you just continued a hearing until May 26th. That's the 4th Wednesday of May, so you will have a meeting that night. Staff was also intending to have another application for you that evening, another hearing. And in June, we also expect at least 1 hearing in June. So we're keeping you very busy, but that is a reflection of building and development activity in the community. We have, in the first 3 months of this year alone, already eclipsed last year's new housing starts. We have 80 more in the pipeline scheduled for this year alone. So it's a significant building activity right now. In case you are asked around town about delays in permitting, they are occurring, unfortunately. Frankly, we're just a little dependent on staff to be able to handle the volume of work and the complexity of some of these applications. We are actively, though, recruiting for a permit specialist to try to help alleviate that. Permit specialist comes from the building fund, so it's a separate fund from the general fund to try to help mitigate that and to have our turnaround times go faster. Committees, obviously you are a committee. A reminder that committee applications for any city committee are going to be due by the end of the week. So please get your committee packets into the city recorder if you haven't already. I believe 2 of you, I think we sent out an update on your term expiries. So just pay attention if you haven't already, in case you wanted to re-up. And the same applies for any other city committee out there that's out there. I believe we are still running a little bit behind on the number of applicants based on the seat vacancies. So if you or other people are interested in another committee, please be sure to check it out and get the applications in.
If there's somebody you don't like, you fill out an application.
There you go.
If they're
Fill it out for them. The gift that keeps giving. Also, the city's website just got a recent refresh. If you haven't seen it, take a look. It is with our new branding and interfacing. We also put up some new city limit signs. Hopefully you've seen them around town and are liking them, and we're hoping to continue on that trend, budget permitting, into the next fiscal year. So hopefully you'll see more fresh look from town. Amber or Rini, anything to add from our department perspective?
We have officially signed our agreement for the Parks Master Plan as of today. So we're starting to do that project. We're kicking that off soon, and we'll have the kickoff meeting in early May, which is in a week.
And at some point, I'm sure this group will be kept up to date with it too, even though it's mostly the Parks Advisory Committee that'll be the main group working with staff and the consultant on that, but we'll give you an update when we can.
All right.
So with that, I think we'll yield back.
Okay. Commissioners, anything?
On the 26th, the 7 p.m. start.
Yes, sir. That's what we're planning for.
All right. I just want to put it on my calendar.
Thank you. Okay.
I got a question on Robert's Rules of Order. Isn't a chairman's vote last so he can break a tie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm on it. Okay. Anybody have anything? No? Oh, Commissioner Mamone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So a couple of questions, a couple of things. I have submitted my application of interest to serve on the Planning Commission again.
Okay.
Wonderful. The question is for you, Chris. We have meetings periodically, a special meeting, no meeting. Is there a way we can keep constant the meeting ID? I know the passcode is always the same, it's the zip code, but is there a way that doesn't introduce confusion of moment of terror when I realize that I have 3 minutes to go, I cannot find that meeting ID, and I try to go back to the old files and I realize it's not working. So maybe there is a way we can say, this is for us. We are this chosen people to meet here on the Wednesday. And I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's doable, but that would simplify. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think, and Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, I know we did that for our regular meetings. I think tonight, because it was a special meeting, maybe we different meeting ID, but I think it's on a recurrence, so it should be the same.
Okay. So the May 26th might be again on a special one. So
I think what we can try to do is see if we can just add those special meeting dates to the recurrence. We'll let you know.
Okay, sure. Again, it's not important, but we were notified. And this is a question that I might regret to ask, but did you just say or imply that people can serve on different commissions at the same time in the city of Troutdale? Sorry.
Different commissions?
I understood that, if I understood correctly, in different committees. So did you say that an individual can serve on the planning commission and the budget committee, or a different committee? Multiple committee?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And the deadline to apply for those committees, assuming vacancies, is the 31st, right?
It's Friday, yeah.
This Friday.
5 p.m.
Okay. So they might need a visit to City Hall to inquire about what committee have vacancies at this point.
Yeah, on the front page of the recently rebranded Troutdale website, under Community View News, there's a link to be volunteer to be on a city committee.
Okay.
And that pulls up each of the committees that we're hoping to staff, and then you can download the material.
Okay.
And since you're already on a committee, and since I believe you've refiled, I don't think you would have to resubmit any sort of SEI statement of economic impact. It would be applied for the same.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Of course. Well, thank you very much. Again, I do not be disclosed. I'm very interested in this committee, but if there is an opportunity also to be somewhere else, and maybe depending upon. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Motion to adjourn, maybe?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting of April 28, 2021. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
Thank
evening.
you.
Good night.
Nice seeing
Bye-bye.
you all.
Bye. Thank you.